So when we're labeling an herbarium specimen, and you've seen a few so far, you'll always want to make sure that you are documenting who collected it, what it is, when you collected it, the date, and where it was. And that's sort of the bare minimum for a good specimen that could be deposited into a fungarium. And I wanted to sort of show an example. This has obviously got a lot going on, but for example,
Our 90s version.
yeah,
Still from the
yeah,
90s.
kind of an example of what the layout of a fungarium label might look like, where you offer it be, and this is more specifically for plants, but it's definitely functions for fungi as well, where you would say fungi of Texas, and you have the identification. It's very important that you have the geographic locality. So not only do you say, the exact location of where you are, but you want to give the higher political units. You want to give the country, the state, the county. That information can be important for how people parse this data when they're looking at things along down the line, as well as much detailed information about the place that you collected it. So ideally, we can and do add coordinates, which are on the label as well, but as much description of the exact location that you've collected the specimen is great. And that includes information about how far you are from a road, what park you're in, that sort of thing, as well as all of the ecological components. What sort of overstory canopy are you working with? What's the litter look like? Those sorts of things. And of course, as much characteristics as you can describe for the specimen, because as we've seen, these mushrooms are not particularly easily identified once they're dried. So as much data as any one collector can provide regarding what that specimen looked like is always incredibly helpful for a label. And that also includes elevation and slopes. Slopes can often be a good predictor of whether or not a particular fungi might be likely or unlikely to be in a particular place. And I've already mentioned that the date, who collected it, and not absolutely necessary, but it's ideal that anyone who's going to be collecting specimens for a fungarium start a unique collection number, so that it makes it easier for you to distinguish between your collections, so that each individual collection has its own unique identifier for yourself. And anyone, you can also add any and everyone who collected that mushroom with you, who was on your collecting trip. That can always be helpful down the line. And of course, anything collected at for the University of Texas will have the TEX acronym. So these are things you can put together yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in submitting specimens to the fungarium, you definitely want to make sure that your specimen is completely dry. You don't have to have it in archival packaging. That's something that we do at the herbarium, but you want it to be dried, and we want to make sure that you want to try to have as many a label associated with the specimen. So you can print out your own label and put it in the bag with all of the information. And then you would also want to submit all of your photos that you collected, where the photo names are your unique identification. So we need to be able to distinguish between individual specimens so that those things can be parsed for the online platform. And then alternatively, or in addition to a label, we actually have a spreadsheet format that we can distribute to anyone who wants to submit multiple specimens, so that you can parse out your data, and it just makes it quicker and easier for us to get them online. But of course, it's not absolutely necessary that we have that digital format, but as long as we have everything that we need on the label, we'll be able to parse that ourselves, or with the help of any volunteers that are interested, in order to bring those to us. And I guess I also wanted to mention something that most people might not think about is that in order to submit a specimen, you do not have to have it completely identified all the way down to species. There are plenty of specimens, vascular plant specimens, that get submitted without complete identifications, maybe only to family or to genus, and occasionally not at all, although that's not ideal. But sort of the benefit of having these things in a fungarium is that over time, other people, if you have your specimen well described and well imaged, someone else can come along, take a look at that data, and offer some new information, identify it, or get a piece of tissue in order to do some genetic studies and get a better identification on it. So don't feel like you need to get through the key all the way down to species in order for it to be a valid specimen.